is Donnie McPhee. I started playing Ultimate in 1996. I currently am the coach, quasi-player with Spawn still, hanging in there at my age, and I also am one of the captains of Borderline, the Masters team from the Maritime Provinces. I've been out with a couple of friends actually and tried throwing around Greg Erickson, Andrew McDougall, big influences here on me, Rex Bolden, and at the time I had been playing football. I've been playing for 10 years, and when I went out for my first Ultimate scrimmage, I haven't played touch football since, not once. I've been playing Ultimate for just a summer when I went to my first tournament in Clambake, and it was a men's team out of Fredericton. And that was the first year when Fredericton started, I think, by the Fredericton River Rats. But when we were heading down to Clambake that summer, we decided we needed a better name. And a lot of the guys in the team fished, really. A lot of guys made their own flies and stuff, and that's where the name Spawn came out of it. And just like our Great Atlantic Salmon, it was just live, breed, die. So we've had that logo. It's going on 19 years now. It's still a champion. At the time, we were just men's. There were one or two women in the city that would come out with us. And I remember going to my first tournament. Andrew McDougall, our captain, kept saying, "I hope there's some guys we can pick up. God, I hope there's some guys we can pick up." And I'm there, "What are you talking about? We have 14 guys. Why would you need anybody?" And I quickly realized our first game was against Dog. They showed up 45 minutes late, which I thought was quite rude. The game was over in 45 minutes and they walked away. And then I realized, okay, this is a sport. And I'd always been coaching sports, and I realized right then that I wasn't satisfied with, this wasn't how my Ultimate career was going to go to these tournaments and getting destroyed. And again, I'm not great with years, but around 97, 98 in there is when Andrew left the city, and he had sort of been running a lot of stuff. By then, he had started with my assistants, because we were working together. We had UFO, a summer tournament in the city. We had Fruit Bowl going on. We started Parlay Beach that year. So we had a lot going on, and we just started the league, and he left, and basically left all that with me. So it was a quick indoctrination to how to run tournaments, how to get things going. But again, like I said, we're a small city. And I could tell right off, like with a men's game, we were at a huge disadvantage. We just didn't have the numbers to be going up against the big cities. And that's another thing, being isolated here. There wasn't a lot of Ultimates, so we had to go to the States. We had to go to Montreal, Ottawa, playing against big cities. There wasn't a whole lot of small town Ultimate going on. But then we started getting some women out, and I made the decision, I guess it would have been 99, that we were going co-ed from here on. There are men's clubs and men's teams, I guess. There used to be a men's team, and they'd go with Spawn, but right then we said, no. If it's Spawn, we're co-ed. So that's where Jerk Factory sort of grew out of there, and the Chrome Ladies. So if there was a men's tournament, they'd go, but not as Spawn. We want to start protecting our club name. Something else everybody goes through the growing pains, but at the beginning, our first year, where we had tryouts, we had 40-some people show up. We kind of picked our team, and right away the people who didn't make our team or didn't like our philosophy, because we were working pretty hard then, they said, well, we're going to be another club, and they went off and were smack. And that lasted for about 2 years. And then we sort of got back together and said, look, we're too small for this. We need everybody out, and that's where our open club policy came. And we stick to that right now. We've been going for a long time, and our practices are open all the time. Yeah, for any practice, we might get 3 or 4 brand new people showing up, and 90% of those people might not stick around, but by having an open door policy, every now and then we find that gem of a player who really bites on and sticks with it. We've also been able to learn from it. We have guys like John Hassel stops in whenever he's in town, and Toverline has stopped in, and many other, just people from other competitive clubs. They stop in, and we're always willing to listen to what they have to say. We try not to put them on the spot, but we usually ask, what's your favorite drill you want, just to keep things fresh within the club. I guess from coaching a co-ed club, I've always felt that the women have to really buy into the system for it to work. to have a bunch of guys out there who don't appreciate the co-ed aspects, because there are many different. It's not. It's a totally different game, the co-ed game, from men's or women's, because you have to integrate that things are going at different speeds. But just because maybe the women's side of the game is a little bit slower, relatively speaking, the gap between your top women and whoever's guarding them might be greater than with the guys. So it's all about reading and feeding off each other, and it takes a little more effort, I think, with that. And then same with zones and stuff. It's not a matter of just hopping out and 7 on. You really have to position your strengths where they're best suited. Yeah, I think one of the interesting aspects for our club is going into tournaments. It's club members that get to decide who represents the club. So as a coach, if we're heading to a tournament, say heading into this tournament, Fruit Bowl, we had 30 men and 20 women coming out to practices that want to play. So I canvass 4 women, 4 men who are always at practice, not necessarily vets. You usually try to pick one brand new rookie just to get their opinion, and I say, okay, out of this list of people, who should represent our club? Who best represents what Spawn's about? And it's always interesting what comes out of it. But for me as a coach, if I don't have the backing of the club, just because I want Joe Johnson on the team because I think he's great, if no one wants him on the team, then in a tournament setting, it just doesn't work out for us. And that would go. So after we have our 20 and 14, we practice for 2 more weeks, and then we would, again, go to a totally different group of players and say, okay, here's your list, who's going to represent Spawn, and then who needs to be on that developmental team. That gets quite interesting because we might have, like this weekend, we have a girl, Sarah Blackmore, 16 years old, being to 3 practices, and we took her over a few other women who will be coming out for a year or so, just because she has potential. And you can't be afraid, I guess, to put your club name behind someone that has potential. And it's quite difficult, of course, for someone who's been coming out to practices, but they just might not have that. I mean, they love the sport, but they don't have that gift that she might have that we see. Yeah, so our turning point, I think, as a club, again, we've been going to a lot of local tournaments, going down to Massachusetts, going to Comedy of Errors, going to Sherbrooke, and, finishing in the, a 32-team tournament, being satisfied to make top 12. We went to Comedy of Errors, and I believe it was 2000, and we played the defending national champions, and we beat them first game. And that was sort of the turning point. Now, they, in their defense, took us very lightly, and they probably didn't have a couple of players dressed. It was the first game in the morning, no problem. Anyway, we turned that tournament, rode that high, back to the final, met them again, and we lost in the final. But that changed our club right there. We went from, being that social, wanting to win every party, play hard, but win the parties, to all of a sudden realize, for a small city, we can do it as long as we do it our way. We went on to win Sherbrooke tournaments the year after that, or 2 years later. We were in the finals, and then we won it the next year, and then we were in the finals again. And then I think, for our club, finishing 3rd in nationals in 2010 in Sherbrooke. And that was, for a small city, that was a real high point for us. One thing I would like to say, that as a coach, my biggest difficulty is that we get players that come in all the time, because we're an open club. And we have players who come in and stay, and they're with us, and they've played, in Victoria, Vancouver, Toronto, on top level teams. And everybody wants to tell you, this is how everybody else is doing it. And we realized a long time ago, with the personnel we have, you can't beat somebody else doing what they do, because they do it better. And usually for teams, we're going up against bigger, faster, better athletes overall, so we have to do things our way. So we take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We spend a lot of time reading on what other teams are doing and incorporating bits and pieces. And that's probably what has led to the success we have when we are successful. For me personally, at my age of 48, keeping in it, it's really my kids. I'm very fortunate. I'm one of these guys that always wanted to play sports with the kids. I have 2 boys, 26 and 21, and here I am living the dream. You know, still playing with a club. We don't cut. I get to stay, and you know, we're traveling around and having a lot of fun. And I think for any of us or any of you out there who have kids and stuff playing, I mean, you should aspire to that because there's nothing better. You know, to go to a better tournament with your kids.